Matt mentioned that we've talked a lot about disease, or this group has been involved with disease response, and that's, very appropriate for an animal health organization to spend a lot of time talking about that. But, like Dr. Ellis mentioned and Matt mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities for animal issues in responses or disasters or emergencies other than disease issues. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about some of those things with Animal Health Commission in the state of Texas, how we're doing some things. The first thing I wanted to throw up here is I think it will make a little more sense when we talk about some of the things we're doing with planning, if you can kind of get a little bit of a grasp on the scope of our agency. We're a very large animal health organization. We have the good fortune of having a large infrastructure, so it allows us to do some things. So, as ironic as it is, the agency was founded in response mode in 1893 to respond to the fever tick issues and cattle fever, and we're still doing that 120 years later. But again, that's a disease issue, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time. So, our mission has always been to maintain the health and marketability of Texas livestock. But in the last few years, we've also added this piece down at the bottom about, being prepared and responding to emergency situations involving animals. So I'll just throw that up there. Again, the scope of our infrastructure is large. We've got 15 veterinarians, hopefully some more pretty soon that are in the agency. 10 of those are in the field, so we have quite a bit of capability there. We've got 70-ish livestock inspectors scattered out throughout the state livestock inspectors, in addition to the federal AHTs. So we have a lot of capability there to do some things that, maybe smaller organizations don't quite have. We also have, all these other things that all of us touch emergency management at some point in doing our normal duties, whether that's communications or traceability and herd certification, entry requirements. All of these things tie into emergency management at some point. So the reason I throw this one in here is because, again, Texas is a pretty big piece of geography, and with that comes a lot of different vulnerabilities, and we'll talk about some vulnerabilities as we move through this. But, we see all kinds of things. We've got a considerable coastline. We've got some pretty significant river basins, so you have the water and the flooding and those things like that. You get up north, and on occasion there's things like ice storms and blizzards even in Texas. So, we just have a lot of different things that can go on there, wildfires, etc. So what is the role of the Animal Health Commission in disease, in response, emergency response, and natural disaster response especially? Well, Texas Animal Health Commission is the lead agency for animal issues in response. So that was set forth by the Governor's Office of Emergency Management, and it's in statute that we're in charge if there's animals involved in emergency. So we have to deal with that. What does that mean? So we do a lot of planning, both with the locals and at the state level. We're even involved in some national level planning with some things, so we do a lot of planning. We also, on the grounds in response, we're doing damage assessments. We're doing, looking at carcass disposal issues, working with state agencies and state partners to deal with those carcass problems. In the case of things like Ebola, we worked a lot with the health department, the public health department. So we do a lot of coordination, which to me is a big part of the emergency management piece, is not just the planning and the responding, but developing those relationships as you go along, so that when something happens, it's not, well, who do we need to talk about this? You've got a list and you've got the people right there and can look at that and go, okay, this is what needs to happen. So, which brings us to the crux of the matter related to planning. Is, why do we need to do this? I think everybody in this room would be certainly aware that these animal issues are people issues, and everybody is aware of in natural disasters, people who would not leave harm's way because they couldn't take their pet with them. Well, that animal issue became a people issue very quickly, and that's a pretty severe example. But other reasons why Animal Health Commission is involved is, we, again, statutorily have to be involved. We got told we would do this and be involved in the planning piece with the Division of Emergency Management to work with the local jurisdictions to start addressing some of these issues. It's also important to note on the local planning piece, and you all are probably aware of this, that, it's tied to reimbursement. If the locals don't have plans, if something happens and there's a declaration, if there's no plan, then it's going to be really hard for them to get reimbursement. So that's a good motivator for the locals to become involved. And certainly everyone's aware that when you have an animal issue, that draws a lot of media attention. And when you have media attention, you certainly enjoy political attention too. And good, bad, or indifferent, that's the world we live in. And those of us in state government for sure are very aware of the political ramifications of things that can happen with animal issues. So moving into the more into the planning piece, I know that Matt mentioned some more of the response piece, and when I talked to Lindsay and Matt about this, and they said, well, this is kind of the deal, I had to narrow it down somewhere because both of these topics are fairly large. So, to squeeze it into 20, 30 minutes, just kind of pick some things that we're doing, and tied to our infrastructure, it gives us the capability to go out and do some of these local planning activities with groups. So the main thing that we want to push with the locals and with just in general with our planning, especially related to natural disasters, all of these are local issues first. They have to deal with it at the local level, and then it escalates, right? That's right out of NIMS. Everybody's aware of all that works, and everybody should understand that. So, what type of hazards? We certainly, when we're talking about planning with these bunches, we want to talk about an all hazards approach. We want them to think about their vulnerabilities, but we want them to think outside of, well, we're just going to plan for a hurricane if we're on the coast. Well, there could still be fires or tornadoes or whatever as well. So we're trying to make them think about all the hazards that could be involved. And yeah, even earthquakes in Texas, we do have some significant fault lines too. So hasn't happened, but you never know. So the biggest way that we address that with the locals is through these county animal issues committees. We've worked real hard to get these established in the counties. We've had some challenges in getting these going, primarily in the populated counties. They have a lot of infrastructure of their own. They've got emergency management, they've got animal control, they've got all these things. So they're a little bit more reluctant to have us get involved and help with identifying animal issues than what some of the smaller, less populated areas are. And that kind of holds true with the very, very sparsely populated counties too. They pretty much are of the attitude, well, we're just going to take care of ourselves and y'all don't need to worry about it. So you kind of have the happy middle ground in there where people want us to be involved and want to have that conversation related to planning activities and what are we going to do when this happens type of stuff. But in addition to the livestock inspection duties, the run-of-the-mill stuff that, livestock markets and following up on permits and disease surveillance and all that good stuff that the livestock inspectors do, emergency management is part of their everyday job as well. Every one of them is assigned to a county, and every one of them has a responsibility of being involved in these animal issue committees. And so whether that's, at the point of trying to help them get one started or continued participation to be there as they develop, the committees develop plans and move forward with their planning activities. So that's part of the job with livestock inspectors in Texas. We also provide some subject matter expertise. We're not there to write their plan or tell them how to do it. We're just there to provide some expertise and be a source of information for them, especially, when you think about, are they in a county where hurricanes are an issue? Is that a vulnerability? Or are they in a county in the Panhandle where there's a lot of concentrated animal feeding operations where there could also be tornadoes? We're just trying to help them think through some of these processes. In addition to us being involved in that, we have a really good tool in our toolbox there through the College of Veterinary Medicine at A&M. Every fourth-year vet student is required to take an emergency management rotation now. And part of that is these students go out and meet with these locals and develop guidelines to help address specific pieces of their emergency animal issue plans. And so, there's not a better system in place to do that. You've got a group of highly capable, highly motivated, captive writers to get some of this accomplished, and it's really working well. We're getting a lot of good work. And again, it's when A&M goes to these places, it's to address specific pieces of their plans, their animal response plans. And I think Matt's going to talk about some of that with that presentation. So, obviously, industry is important to all of us. That's why we're here, and that's why we do what we do is industry. And it becomes very apparent that we need to involve industry in our planning activities. Definitely we want to try to get local industry people involved in the animal issues committees, but the next step up at the state level, we involve the stakeholders, industry stakeholders, in all of our planning activities too, at the state level as part of the overall emergency management plan. At least once a year we try to have all the stakeholders physically come to the Austin office and sit down and review written animal response plans and things like that, and make sure everybody's still on the same page about roles and responsibilities and some of that. Also having their input is really critical, because they're the experts, right? So getting their input in these plans is really a critical piece of the planning and then response piece. So the other piece that I bolded down there is related to veterinary practitioners, and this is definitely the case when you get back down to the local level. You have to have the involvement of the local veterinary practitioner. They are the local animal health expert, and not only are in the event of an emergency or a disaster, it's their clientele that are involved, but that's also their friends and neighbors. So it's really important that they're involved in that planning piece. Everybody thinks in response terms what role will the local veterinarian have, and that is the typical, well, they're going to triage and help treat and do euthanasias and all of those type veterinary things, right? But the planning piece is even more important than just having them as a resource, but getting them involved in that local animal issues committee to talk about sheltering. Where are we going to do that? Who's the veterinarian, or who are the animal health experts who are going to provide the veterinary care if we're going to shelter? Maybe we're going to shelter for another county. Maybe we're 2 counties up from the coast, and everybody from Orange County right there around Beaumont's going to bring their stuff to our county and shelter it. Well, who's going to provide the veterinary care? How are we going to do that? Again, their input is critical, when you start talking about the animal health issues associated with this. Of course, one other thing that I would mention is, at the state level in terms of planning and response, we have a lot of partners that are involved in that piece. Definitely the ag extension folks play a critical role. At the local level, they help us with providing the contacts. Who do we need to get in the room? Who needs to sit down and be on an animal issues committee? They're the people that know those people and can get them to come sit at the table. In the response, they have a local person there who know the people that are involved, but they also have their own statewide network to start handling resource requests and helping with those response issues like that too. Obviously industry again. When I talk about some of the response piece here, in terms of capturing livestock that have been displaced and then figuring out who they belong to, we have to have people like the Texas and Southwestern cattle raisers, because they're the brand people, the brand inspectors in the state. And so, they have to be there to help us ID and make sure we're getting the right cattle back to the right people. Especially in this day and age, can you imagine if there were several thousand displaced animals with what cattle are worth right now, how many people would be coming out of the woodwork to come out? Yeah, those are mine. Yeah. So we have to involve those partners like that. Obviously, TVMA is another big player in our partnership there. They've provided us some pass-through grant money to do some things, to have meetings with the local veterinary medical associations, to involve the local practitioners, give them a meal and get them some CE hours, and you'd be surprised how many of them will show up to come be involved in something like that. And it's been really good. So TDA, Texas Animal Health Commission, is a standalone agency in Texas. We also have an ag department that, especially in response, is involved with a lot of the resource management piece in terms of feed and getting those types of resources together to respond. So we do a lot with them in terms of that. So to kind of move along, I've got a lot of stuff here, and I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I'm getting close to the end, I promise. We do have, some response things, good, bad, or indifferent. That's one of my favorite things. But unfortunately for us, we've had the opportunity to respond to some natural disasters and some disasters that weren't natural, like the West explosion. All of us, a lot of us in some form or fashion have had something to respond to, but we've had a lot of things to get to respond to. Fires all over the state, and hurricanes and tropical storms and floods, and so anyway, explosions, things like that. And in terms of something like a catastrophic event like a hurricane, so this is, the last big one we had was Ike, so it's been several years. Even then, when we weren't as far along in the planning piece as we are now, we realized that there were some issues that needed to be addressed and started working on those. And those included the evacuation and shelter piece. What are you going to do when the governor gives the order to evacuate Galveston and parts of Houston? Where is all that stuff going to go? So, we start working through that process with the locals. Are there things there in place? Are there things in counties just up from the coast that can accommodate? The dogs and cats are one thing. We have public health issues with those about unknown rabies status and all of those different things. Can they go on the bus? Can they go on the... So there's a whole myriad of things related to the small animal, but same issues can exist with the large animals. A lot of people own horses down there, so where do you go with those horses? Can't just kick them out and say good luck. I guess they can, but that's probably not the right answer. So where's an emergency holding facility for horses, or the small backyard weekend rancher that's got 3 head of cows, and a goofy bull? Where are we going to take that stuff? So again, those situations in response, pre-event even, are really critical to think through. Anytime we have something like that coming up, we activate our animal response coordination. I need to change that. It's actually called the Animal Response Operations Center now, but that's the latest iteration in the Animal Response Plan. But anyway, we stand that up, and that's an adjunct group to the State Operations Center. So anything that comes to the State Operations Center or from our folks on the ground, they can contact us, and we've got people sitting around the table that can get the answer or know the answer or can assist in a more timely fashion than trying to, we got to track down so-and-so because they're the ones with the answer to that question. We try to get all those people right there and ready to go to help respond to issues as they arise. Obviously, as we moved into the post-landing of the storm, there were some significant issues. The biggest one is related to reentry. And so there's a picture down there of what some of the roads look like. Well, that creates quite a hassle quite a situation to deal with to get in there. In addition to debris like that, there were parts of the major thoroughfares that were so densely covered with livestock that the human first responders couldn't get down the road. The cattle literally blocked the ambulances from being able to get down there to help people. So you have to deal with those animal issues so that you can get the people issues going down the road. So, damage assessments, certainly we're involved. We've got some expertise with the damage assessment piece. Definitely want to be involved with helping the vet clinics get up and going. Always, as all of you know, the key to response is to be as quick as possible so that you can get on with the recovery phase and get life back to normal. So, carcass disposal and donation management. Those are 2 very big pieces, and especially in Ike. I wasn't there, but certainly we have an expert sitting in the room that was 2 of them that were definitely involved in that response. And, not only was it an issue to deal with all of the good-hearted folks that wanted to send stuff and send help, that became a major logistics issue just to deal with that. But how do you get that stack of white water troughs that are sitting at this donation drop-off point across a piece of water to where the cattle are? And then how do you get fresh water into those troughs to help treat the dehydration and salt toxicity? So, there's a whole lot of things there that have to work through and think about. So, and it doesn't have to be something as catastrophic as a hurricane. Our planning piece, especially on the local level, is very much so important when we start talking about these small events. Up in the Panhandle where there's a lot of movement of livestock by trucks, this is a real serious deal, these traffic accidents. Truck wrecks happen, and is there a plan in place? Do the locals know what to do? Ms. Peterson from North Dakota was talking about that with the bovine emergency response stuff. This is a really critical piece. Do they know who to call to bring a panel or panels in a trailer? Does dispatch know who to talk to get somebody out there to deal with humane euthanasia issues that need to occur? Things like that. Larger events, that's just another opportunity for us to be involved and help the locals out as the situation overwhelms the locals. For instance, in this flooding situation, that's when we get with the county and TxDOT to start dealing with carcass disposal and Parks and Wildlife, because they've got boats to help get cattle and stray livestock and deal with those issues. Same with the fires. I mean, obviously, I would be remiss in this presentation if I didn't mention fires, because we've had some fairly significant fires to respond to, even more so, or even more recently than the hurricane. So, same type of deal, carcass disposal issues, livestock that need to be treated. Your veterinary community is very important in fires, because they're the ones that are going to be doing the triage and the treatment until people like the vet team can be called in to help with that process. So it's important for all of these folks to have sat down and visited about some of these issues and have an idea what to do. So, and last but not least, another tool that we have with the Animal Health Commission is this emergency horseback responder team. We have had this now for about 3 years. This was an idea from Dr. Ellis, and it's come to fruition. We've got 40-ish members on this team. They're comprised of not only Texas livestock inspectors, and these are all volunteers. They do this because they want to. But we also have mounted patrol inspectors from the tick force that are on this team. So I have a really good video. We have the fortune of having been able to hire a young man that comes from a media background and has won some awards with his videography. And so we've got some really good videos put together, but we don't have sound, so I can't play that. And then you're not going to miss Dr. Ellis's rousing words of "We're here to help," and he's right. You can find it on YouTube, and definitely it is a tool that we want to use in our state. But if there are people around us, the Gulf states, if they needed us or somebody else needed us, we certainly would want to be able to help provide that resource if they needed it. So, in addition to the horseback guys, that comes with equipment too, corrals and panels and squeeze chutes and whatever. So it's just a matter of working through that process.